So yeah, this is called the Carp-It Bomb. Created by Matt Bennett, who is actually from DeRidder, Louisiana, but kind of made a name for himself in the Texas Hill Country. Created 3 pretty well-known patterns for chasing the Guadalupe bass, carp, rios over there in the Hill Country streams. This is one of them. This is, like I said, it's a carp pattern, but it can also be used for bass. It could be a little crawfish imitation. It could be more like a dragonfly or a damselfly imitation. So pretty versatile. He said he kind of designed it if you wanted something that has a bigger profile but lands kind of softly on the water, doesn't make like a huge splash or a bunch of commotion. And you can kind of see this dubbing is so bushy. It just creates a lot of surface area without a lot of weight to kind of soften the landing on the water. His other flies that I really like, the Lunch Money, is a weighted streamer that uses laser dub and rabbit zonker. Pretty simple, effective little streamer to imitate a bait fish. And the other one that's very similar to this but much smaller is called the Rio Getter. I've been using that one a lot this year for just bluegill and stuff.
David, did you bring extra devices?
I did. I have one.
So we're gonna start.
I didn't bring it with me.
Okay.
And yeah, some questions about the hook, how important the. I do not.
I'm not sure how good.
That's all I need.
Okay. I should have brought the whole thing up here. I typically do.
Okay, there's the half, try to show up early. I can get you.
Can you hand me the pack from the hooks just so I can hold it up? So yeah, the hook is a short, stout. It's heavy wire, which would help for dealing with big fish, or just a little weight. And short shank, but a pretty big gap. So once you get your hook in the vise, you start your thread. And then we're just gonna put on our our bead chain eyes. So again, this isn't super heavy. The hook is kind of heavy, but there's not a lot of weight on it, so probably, I haven't fished it, probably sinks pretty slow. We're gonna do the eyes about 1 eyeball length back from the eye. That's where you should tie them in. We are gonna tie a couple little things up at the front, so you need to leave a little space to tie some stuff in at the very end. So you kind of do some figure 8 wraps where you go over one way, switch it up, go the other way. Oh yeah, thread color, you could use either a drab color. The only thread that's going to be showing is at the very front, at the very end. And Matt said he likes to put a little hot spot so the fish can see it.
Are those the beats that you were handing out?
You gonna get one? I just missed.
I was late. Came late, so it already made the rounds on several things.
All right, after the eyes, we're gonna put in a marabou tail. So take your thread back pretty far. Another thing about this hook is to see how it's kind of got a slight bend. It's not a total straight shot, straight from the back. That'll help the tail. So it's gonna float or sink with the eyes down. If you wrap your thread back a little bit up into that bend, that'll help prop that tail up a little bit. A lot of those carp flies like to have the tail kind of poking upwards a little bit. So like I said, I went back to where these are barbless hooks, but back to about where the barb would be. And then David gave us some marabou feathers. You probably don't need the whole one he gave you, but maybe about half of it. And use the very fine tips. So you don't want a super fluffy feather, but one that's got some of these finer, more defined tips. And we'll make the tail about a shank and a half long. That kind of shank?
Prison weapon like that.
They want the fuzzies to the back, about a length.
A length and a half. I mean, you don't want it to be a little nub, but you don't really want it to be a super, super long tail. We have plenty of marabou if anybody doesn't like their piece or needs more, let us know. Alright, pretty much got the tail in, and so next we're going to put some of the rubber legs in alongside the tail. The piece you have, we're going to put 2 sets of legs, so put some in now and then put some in later. I would go ahead and take the piece you got and cut it right in half. You should be able to use that one piece for both sets.
I was helping him look for his legs.
And we're going to tie, so I have my thread all the way back to where my tail starts, and you're going to want to tie in the legs on one side, matching the length of the tail. So, oop. We're going to tighten it down later, but you know, once you get one side, and you want it to go on either side of the hook. I'll turn it sideways once I got this one in a little better. Tie it in on one side of the hook like that. And then you can take the other piece over and kind of catch it and wrap it on the other side of the tail. So you got it kind of coming off each side there. And then you can trim it, like I said, you want it to be about the same length as your marabou tail. Like I said earlier, you can kind of see have that stuff tied in a little bit farther down the bend than you might think will help that just kind of sit up off the bottom when if you're fishing it along the bottom, those legs will kind of stick up and that tail will stick up a little bit.
They're still in the third?
Top of the third just ended, 6-2 LSU. Yeah, so far.
They were leading last night too.
Yeah. All right, so next we have our dubbing, and the dubbing is kind of what makes this fly, I'd say. I mean, other than that, it's similar to a lot of other stuff, but this is Cohen's Carp Dub. It's a synthetic dubbing with some rubber going on and some kind of shiny, silky, semi-seal kind of fibers. So basically all we want is just a buggy dubbed body. Like I said earlier, we're going to attempt, if you can, to do the split thread dubbing. So if you take your bobbin and you do it counterclockwise, it should unwind your tying thread a bit so that you can kind of, if you rub a bodkin on it, I don't know if you can kind of see it. It's a little dark. Make it darker. You can kind of see how my thread is getting wider, and you can almost see through it because the fibers are starting to come apart. A little bit of, it might take a few pokes, but you can get your bodkin to split that thread.
I think my thread's too small.
Yeah, about 140 denier is the ideal.
Yeah, I think this is.
In absence
No, it's fine. I'm just gonna make a loop.
in absence of that, you can either
I'm just gonna make a dubbing loop.
do a dubbing loop or just a really loose dubbing noodle where you just kind of, you might have to, put it on a couple times and reapply it. But if you can do a dubbing loop or the split thread, I think with the legs and everything, it just helps. It helps hold stuff in, but also doesn't bind it down too much. So you get
We're gonna use all of this.
save a very little bit for the front. So make about I would say about a 2-inch dubbing noodle. I got about that much there.
We got plenty more down here.
Yeah, and we have more dubbing if you don't skimp. But yeah, if you're able to do the split thread, once you've got it in between the thread, you can just spin your bobbin like it's a dubbing spinner. You can kind of see it made just a nice dubbing loop, and you can kind of tease some of the stuff out if you want to. And then basically just dub, again, all we're going for, you can do it however you can do it, but just dub the whole body all the way up to behind the bead chain eyes.
Spread it out in about 2 inches of loop.
Well, that's kind of a disaster.
Yeah, it's a simple fly except for that one step. I can come help if it's easier just to do like I said, just a regular dubbing loop where you just twist dub it on. That'll work too.
You get yours to split.
You buy me help split them?
All right, yeah, and once you've got your dubbed body, the next step is just to put that other set of legs in. So at this point, I think it's easier to work with the fly upside down, or how it's gonna ride in the water. Similar to the back set, it's easy to tie them in on one side with the right length and orientation. And for total length on the front set, the goal should be about halfway down your tail.
Oh, he said to cut that one in half.
So when the
And yeah, grab another set if you need some.
when you tie these other legs, they're supposed to be on the 90 degrees from
You want them on either side, yeah, and then you want them to somewhat orient upwards.
Oh, they're like in the front.
They're in the front right behind the eyes, yep.
Got it.
And you want them to go down?
You want them to go, the hook is going to ride hook point up, and so depending on how your hook is, you want everything to, you don't want it to just go straight down, just a little bit up to where they'll float and flutter upwards a little bit is what we're going for, but on either side of the hook. And for again
You want to kind of straight out.
yeah, straight out. We're gonna put another little piece of dubbing, not a dubbing loop, but just another piece of dubbing between the legs and the eyes to push them back a little bit. So the goal with tying them in is having them stick out the sides and a little bit upwards. And then for total length, you can pull it back and measure it about halfway down your tail and trim. Yeah, so we're tying the legs in right behind the eyes on each side. So I tie one in, take the whole strand.
So like the first time tying the leg?
Yeah, the same as the one on the tail. You take one strand and tie it in on one side, and then pull it across the hook and tie it in on the other side. I can come show you. Either way, but yeah, you just hold that one and wrap over it. And we're gonna put more dubbing between those and the eyes.
So set the same way the tail was?
You want them to
Yeah,
split
they're
down.
basically the same as the tail, just farther up
Mine
towards
is
the
gonna
eyes.
be standing. Mine's not gonna be.
So the last dubbing is going to cover up the thread.
So we got a couple, two more pieces. So you don't need much, but we're gonna take just a little bit and just dub it directly on your thread, twist dub style. And the goal with this piece is to push those legs back a little bit. So just go between the eyes and the legs a couple times. It just pushes them back just a little bit so they're not sticking straight out. They're just angled ever so slightly back. And then you can bring your thread in front of the eyes after that.
It worked for the back.
Tigers get out of the bottom of the third without giving up any runs. It's now 6-2 going in top of the fourth. And then after you've got everything behind the eyes done, two more steps. We're gonna do a little wing with the marabou. So take about as much as you had for the tail. And we're gonna tie it in front of the eyes. You want it to go back not super far. It doesn't have to be super long. I would say if you can get it to go back to where all the way to the back to the bend of the hook, about that long. It kind of just, it's a little bit of flotation to help when it's sinking, orientate the hook so it floats hook point up. And these can be kind of tricky with smaller flies, but
So you just want it long enough just to go to the bend?
just to the bend of the hook, yep. And then one little trick, if you put some wraps in front of that before you trim it, it helps to limit the stragglers after you trim it. And then one final step, whatever, I have just a very tiny bit of dubbing left, but you don't need much. Take just a tiny pinch of dubbing and we're just going to tie it in basically on top of that wing. So if you want to try and orient some of the legs so that they're going lengthwise towards the front or back of the fly, just place it right on top of that wing. You can tie it down if you want to. See, like this one, I could probably double it over, get another bonus piece out of it. Then you can whip finish, and that's it. Nah, I didn't put any head spin. If you have some, certainly go for it. I've heard some people say carp can smell anything. I don't know how. I don't get chances to go after them that often to test out. Yeah, right.
Where's the little tool thing?
Yeah, it's definitely a cool little buggy fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it could. It's
It looks like a lot.
similar to a lot of little olive bugs. They all work for me around here.
And I do like it sits upside down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it could be able to drag it across the bottom slowly and hopefully not get stuck on every single limb and twig down there.
Are they basically bottom feeders or will they?
Yeah, pretty much they're rooting around on the bottom. I mean, occasionally you'll see some come up and kind of slurp something, but I think that's kind of rare. Grass carp, feed on the surface on grass. I don't know if they would probably go for this if you drug it in front of their face and they were in the right mood, but
From my experience, they just sit there and just do their thing. You pull it across.
yeah, they're kind of annoying.
Get it all the way.
Just get it all the way into the mouth.
No, they'll suck it in, but you gotta put it right there with the grass.
Can I borrow your bumpkin for just a second?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's cool.
And for sizes, I mean, I would say this is pretty big for a carp fly and for a smaller bass fly. But if you wanted to try something a little smaller, it might work. Again, it's a little easier just to go with something like a Rio Getter. There's not much difference in them. It's some of these materials.
I don't recall
That's the difference.
the ones I was looking at were much smaller than this.
Yeah.
I think I got whoever wrote, I don't know, there's a guy that wrote there's a bass book and a carp book that look alike, but it's not, I don't think it's the same author.
Do the legs need to be cut?
Yeah, so the back legs should be the total length of your tail. The front legs, it's tier's choice. The front legs, you don't want them to be all the way to the back of the tail. Somewhere between halfway down your tail, somewhere in that ballpark.
Whatever is pleasing to your eye.
And sometimes when I fish them, if I do this,
On the wrong side, Joe. You put that wing on the wrong side.
it's upside down. It's a beard.
This wing right here.
Oh, okay.
The throat, your throat. You wanted to put it on this side of the fly,
Got
so
it.
it would do additional.
I tell you what.
It helps orient it a little.
Look
Yeah,
at this.
parachute.
I mean, that thing just sits.
Right, and it sits tail up.
I have some
Yeah.
flies that look very
pretty
similar to
awesome.
that. I'll have to bring in the book. That's the throat.
Well, yours fits, mine pops.
Some of the salmon flies look kind of like that. Or some of the shrimp flies look like that.
I think just the way the materials are with that wing on top, it'll probably make it.
Yeah, the wing on top should help orient it. I mean, some of that stuff on the bottom and the shape of the hook kind of holds it up.
Yeah, great bluegill fly. What is four?
Big bluegill fly.
Well, you know what? That might be the bluegill you want to catch.
Right.
It's actually a 6.
That's a 6?
Yeah.
Against
Whatever,
4.
giant hook, not bluegill hook.
I got
What? Maybe, like I said, you might be catching them big bluegills with this thing.
Check a pen.
Yeah, a big chicken pen.
Right here.
I think this too would be good for like bass and the co-meat stuff. They like stuff like that.
Yeah, especially now. I mean, we got a little rain here in town today, but everything is so low right now. If you're worried about maybe spooking a fish with
It
a,
looks like a big old dragonfly now, too.
yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
you could probably use that anywhere.
Did y'all tie the baby fat minnow, Sydney?
Yes.
Last? Yeah, I fished.
Well,
That's a great fly. I mean, if you strip it, I don't know if I was fishing it right, but you strip it hard. I mean, it
I
flips
think
and
I caught
flutters.
it way back at some point, maybe.
You got time? You want to tie another one?
It's up to you guys. I might go watch this game somewhere since it seems to be a winner.
We did one of the fat minnows.